Alright, go on. Name a failed wonder kid. You got someone in mind? Alright, 3, 2, 1. You said me before the knee injury. It's alright, I know.
You're distinctly average, but that is a compliment. So, but
one name that might not have sprung to mind, though, was Paul Pogba. I mean, come on, the guy's a World Cup winner, Serie A dominator, with almost 100 caps for his country. How could he be? However, at the age of just 30, having been banned for 4 years following on from doping charges, this man's career could have been so much more. So what happened to Paul Pogba? What exactly went wrong? There's never a dull day in the Pogba household, honestly. Since this guy burst onto the scene, it's been mental story after mental story. Transfer sagas, doping charges, being blackmailed by his own brother, a black male, sacrificing a hyena or something at one point. I mean, that's when things really got out of hand. The zookeepers in the local area were not happy with that one.
What are you playing at?
It really has been a pantomime show over the last few years for Paul Pogba, and with not much else to show for it. And of course, I mentioned it in the intro, having found a banned substance in a sample given to Italian authorities by Paul Pogba at the end of 2023. He, of course, hasn't featured for Juventus since. I mean, he wouldn't have done anyway. He probably would have got injured. He's now been found fully guilty and is spending 4 years on the sidelines of the world of football. And I can't lie, that probably signals the end at the age of 30. I'm going to be getting emotional. I can't lie explaining to my grandkids what Paul Pogba could do on a full moon night once every 4 years.
He was special.
Because I'll tell you for facts, on his day, no one comes close.
On his day, it's Pogba. On his fucking day, he's just better than Ronaldinho, better than fucking...
Paul's going to be even more upset when he realises he actually got banned on a leap day, so now his ban's going to last 4 times longer. Honestly, the irony of it happening on a leap day, that February 29th, that's like the Earth's Day. Jesse Lingard's dance partner in the pen. You really hate to see it, man. Poor Jesse will be left confused in South Korea when Paul isn't in the mood for their annual dab-off championship. But I tell you what, one man who will be happy with this news, Graham Souness, fam. He'll be rubbing his hands together with joy just switching on Sky Sports News. He's knee sliding through his living room as we speak and has written a custom heartfelt letter to Paul Pogba himself as he sits in the footballing sin bin.
I knew you'd end up here, little nigga, right where you belong.
He might have been the reason, I can't lie, reporting Paul for an extra banning order when he finds a packet of paracetamol in Paul's sock drawer.
Here to report the crime.
Yep.
An international war crime.
In contrast to that, though, steroids companies won't be as pleased knowing that their main customer is out of the picture. And you've got to ask yourself, with all these appointments coming in, where exactly is Paul Pogba in all of this? Juventus' physio was left in shock when he found a jar saying PEDs on the front of it in Paul's cupboard. Mate, you should have been more discreet. Slap it in an inhaler like we do. Paul Pogba might be the only person to ever take performance-enhancing drugs and not actually have his performance enhanced. But if you'd have told anyone, any footballing fan across Europe, right, where Paul Pogba would be stood right now back in, say, well, 2014, 10 years ago, they would have laughed and probably elbowed you in the face. Because this guy was beyond promising, yeah? He was the golden boy, quite literally winning the award in 2013. And that had always been known, even from his days in Le Havre's youth academy back in France. Coming from a footballing family, the likes of Florentine Pogba and Matthias, who have gone on to have careers of their own. Matthias, most usually in the career of crime, but a tall, physical, gangly central midfielder with elegance, technique, creativity, and intelligence. He had pretty much every single possible skill that you could need for a footballer, let alone a central midfielder. That Yaya Toure style of centre mid that can pretty much do anything and look unbelievable doing it. He captained Le Havre's under-16s team to a domestic title in just his second season at the club, which of course attracted interest from some of the world's biggest clubs, the likes of which include Manchester United, the club he'd announced that he'd signed for in 2009. It was a journey, it was a life experience for a kid who'd grown up in a completely different atmosphere to Manchester. He'd have to learn the language, learn the culture, and try and adapt to one of the biggest football clubs in the world and try and battle through their youth setup and academy. The one thing in his favour is Manchester United do, well, they love youth academy graduates. And at the time, they were still producing them as well, giving them chances in the first team. He'd rise through the ranks, playing for the side's under-18s, alongside some very familiar faces as well, with an FA Youth Cup win ending in that iconic picture with himself, Jesse Lingard, and Ravel Morrison. But it was a side full of talent, and the first team was as well, which made chances within the first team squad and appearances few and far between. He'd make his debut coming on as a substitute for Javier Hernandez in a game versus Stoke City, but after some broken promises from Sir Alex Ferguson, then, maybe a combination of some mismanagement, but also maybe a bit of overconfidence from Paul, things would end sourly, and after just 3 appearances for the club, he'd announced that he'd be leaving at the end of his contract to join Juventus on a free transfer. Immediately, this kid changed the game for Juve, helping to guide them to 4 consecutive Serie A titles. Now, yes, given at the time Juve were pretty dominant, it's a very different Italian landscape than it is now. I mean, to be honest, Serie A right now is great in terms of competitiveness. Any out of like the top 5 can really win the league every year at the moment. But in his first stint at the club, they were imperious. You just kind of had the fall of both Milan clubs. Napoli were sort of perennial Champions League qualifiers, but nothing more, and same for Roma. There wasn't much in the way of competition, but he helped that. Himself, the likes of Andrea Pirlo, Claudio Marchisio were brilliant. They were scintillating to watch. Paul Pogba was a young, exciting footballer, and it looked like he was on the precipice of fulfilling all of his potential. He was France's under-20s captain, winning silverware with them. As I mentioned before, he won the 2013 Golden Boy Award, an award that's been won by the likes of Kylian Mbappe, Erling Haaland, Jude Bellingham, Wayne Rooney, Lionel Messi, and Sergio Aguero, as well as Anderson and Anthony Martial. All I'm trying to say is he was in esteemed company, and it was deserved as well. And as his time at Juventus went on, he sort of transformed from being this wonder kid who'd just come out of United's academy to being like an actual world-leading, or certainly in the conversation, central midfielder. He was appearing in UEFA Team of the Seasons, FIFA Pro's World 11, I think in 2015, and that would attract interest from some of the biggest clubs in the world, including Manchester United.
I've started to get this feeling that I'm totally fucked.
Yeah, Paul Pogba was back in England and back at Old Trafford. The marketing scheme, unbelievable. Himself and Stormzy in a promo video, new trims all over the gaff. And it was one of the first signings that we'd seen, I think, especially in England, that felt like not only a footballing decision, but also a business, a marketing decision as well. Paul Pogba had his own brand, his own style, and no footballer was similar to that. He was a star on and off the pitch, but he'd still need to prove it on the pitch. You know, he's obviously done very well at Juventus, delivered them a first Champions League final in 15 years, as well as dominating Serie A, but there was an obvious understanding that at that time, Juventus were kind of dominant anyway. When Manchester United struggling, having not reclaimed that glory since Sir Alex Ferguson had retired, Paul was seen as the final piece in the jigsaw to bring the good times back to Old Trafford. He did bring sometimes. There was early promise, I can't even lie. He scored the winner in the Europa League final against Ajax, and in the 2018-2019 season, he grabbed 16 goals and 11 assists in all competitions for his best output in his time at Manchester United, as well as featuring in PFA Teams of the Season, for example. He was recognised in that moment as one of the best players in the league, and he was. On his day. See, the main problem that sort of plagued Paul Pogba throughout his entire career at Manchester United was not only injuries, because there were a lot of them, it was just general inconsistency. His languid, sort of chilled out, relaxed, laid back style often drew criticism from pundits and from fans because it looked like he wasn't trying. There was a little bit of truth in that. The problem was with Manchester United, they couldn't really afford to have a luxury player like that. They weren't performing well enough and consistently enough anyway. So adding a inconsistent, not really going to try off-the-ball player only enhanced their struggles. You would see a return to form when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer joined the club, but again, it was only brief and pretty fleeting. After that, inavailability and injuries took over, to the point where Manchester United gave up on him, and in the end, he would leave on a free transfer for a second time, to join Juventus for a second time. I mean, this guy's career is just like an instant replay. By this point, though, the magic was gone, and the injuries were still having a massive impact. He couldn't really lay down a consistent spot in the squad, in the starting 11 at Juventus, and looked like a shell of his former self whilst he was at the Italian Giants in the first place. But the crazy thing is, whilst that descent at Manchester United had been going on, he'd still been turning up and still been performing for his national side. Paul was absolutely instrumental in their World Cup victory, as they slapped pretty much anybody that stood in their way at the World Cup of 2018. Maybe a little bit overshadowed by the emergence of the new wonder kid in Kylian Mbappe, but he was still one of the main men at the very least. Yet it never really translated into consistency for Manchester United. And now here we are, realising that Paul has a longer criminal record than his own brother Matthias does. Florentine Pogba's just got to do up like tax evasion or something to like complete the set. I wouldn't give up though, honestly. Paul Pogba's agent, yeah, if you're listening, Manchester United, realistically, they'll probably sign him back for like 85 million again when he's 57 and he's finally finished his ban. You can rely on Erik ten Hag to bring him in, only to then sell him again for an exponential loss. Except actually no, he can't, because he's not played for Ajax before, so this was a man that was destined for the stars. stars, but it's all over by the age of 30. Can we call him a failed wonder kid? I mean, I don't know personally. I know there's obviously wild expectations for players sometimes, like Neymar, for example, was expected to be the best player in the world at some stage in his career. I don't think you can necessarily say that about any period. He was probably always behind Lionel Messi or Ronaldo in each year of his career, but ultimately was still massively successful, still wildly changed the landscape of football. It's just the injuries in his move to PSG kind of shortened his peak. The same kind of applies for Paul Pogba, but just even shorter. The guy's got 91 caps for his country. He helped Juventus win 4 straight Serie A's. He's not had a failure of a career. He's just not got to the peak that we all expected him to. What it did feel like was a combination of bad luck, injury-wise, certainly in the last 5 years, but also, in some aspects, a mentality problem. Not a massive one, not as much as the likes of Roy Keane and Jamie Carragher would have you believe. But I think it would be impossible to come away from this video and suggest that Paul Pogba did absolutely everything in his power to succeed at every single point in his career. There were times where he was a passenger. There were times where his heart wasn't in it, especially at Manchester United. And I think he's also a player that was born in the wrong era. Slap him in 2001 and the guy is winning the Ballon d'Or. Because football back 20 years ago, it was a better time. It was a time where you didn't have to run 18 kilometers every 90 minutes. It was a time where you could be a little bit of a passenger and rely on your technical ability to actually have you succeed. Zinedine Zidane was not a world-renowned runner, but was still easily the best player in the world at times during his career. But what do you make of Paul Pogba's career? Obviously, what I will say is, it's a sad end. You know, being banned for 4 years, he's 30 now. By the time he's back, he's going to be 34 and he won't have played for 4 whole years. He's going to be absolutely nowhere near where he is now, let alone his peak from the World Cup of 2018. Could he have achieved more? Should he have achieved more? Let me know down in the comments section below. But that is going to wrap up today's video and I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, then feel free to slap a like on the video and of course subscribe if you are new to the channel. You can also follow me on social media. It is at @officialfng on Twitter and on Insta. But it's been a pleasure ranting at you guys today. Have a wonderful day, enjoy yourselves, and goodbye.